Flight 219 lifted off from JFK just before midnight, slicing through a velvet sky over the Atlantic. The cabin lights dimmed, and the hum of engines settled into a steady rhythm that usually lulled passengers to sleep. Somewhere in row 17, a woman pressed her forehead lightly against the cold window. Her name was Shaw, British passport, quiet demeanor, reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked like anyone else on that overnight flight, ordinary, unthreatening, almost invisible. But the captain noticed her name. From the cockpit, Captain Thomas studied the passenger manifest glowing on his screen. He frowned when he saw it, Shaw. The name brushed a nerve buried deep in his memory. He tried to shake it off. After all, thousands of people shared names. Still, his pulse quickened. He leaned toward his co-pilot. "You ever see this name before?" The co-pilot squinted. "No, why?" Hesitated, then forced a laugh. "No reason, just seems familiar." Outside, lightning flashed in the distance, a faint reminder of a brewing storm over the North Atlantic. The sign chimed. Flight attendants made their final rounds, collecting cups, whispering goodnight. In row 17 closed her book. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, calm, tired, detached. But beneath that calm was a mind that never stopped mapping exits, counting movements, measuring possibilities. Old habits die hard, and some never die at all. The captain's voice drifted through the speakers. "Ladies, and this is your captain speaking. We're expecting a smooth flight tonight with clear weather most of the way. Sit back, relax." He never finished. A violent crash echoed from the rear cabin, followed by a scream. Trays clattered, a baby wailed, and the lights flickered once. Then chaos. 3 men stormed down the aisle, faces masked, rifles glinting in the dim cabin glow. "Everyone down, heads on the floor," one shouted, his accent thick, foreign. Passengers froze, some crying, some frozen in disbelief. The tallest hijacker grabbed a flight attendant by the hair, yanking her to the ground. The plane jolted as the pilot struggled to steady it. Didn't move. Her body obeyed the command, head down, hands visible, but her eyes stayed open, calm, scanning. Years of training pulsed through her veins like instinct. 3 men, military grip, AK-style rifles, not American-made. She took slow breaths, counting their steps. From the cockpit, captain voice crackled over the intercom, strained. "Please remain calm. We are cooperating." A gun butt smashed the speaker grill, cutting him off. One of the hijackers shouted, "No one talks. No one moves." He fired a warning shot into the ceiling. Passengers screamed, the smell of gunpowder mixing with fear. Heart raced. He heard the gunfire and glanced again at the manifest. Shaw. The name burned brighter in his thoughts. He'd seen it in a confidential NATO file years ago, a woman who'd vanished after a covert mission in Afghanistan. Spectre. It couldn't be her. Spectre was dead. But when the cockpit door rattled under the hijacker's fists, he heard a voice from the cabin. Calm, firm, British. "Don't open that door." The sound froze him. He knew that voice. Inside the cabin's eyes locked with the nearest hijacker. "Don't hurt them," she said softly. Her tone wasn't pleading. It was a command wrapped in kindness. The man hesitated for half a heartbeat, thrown off by her composure. Then another ordered him to tie her up. Didn't resist. She let them bind her wrists loosely with a cable tie, hiding the faint smirk on her lips. She had already counted 6 potential weapons within reach. A pen, a metal buckle, a shattered tray, and the hijacker's own holster strap. Timing would decide everything. Outside the cockpit, the leader banged on the reinforced door. "Open it, Captain, or people die." Inside stared at the door, sweat dripping down his temple. That voice, the British woman's, echoed in his mind. Calm, precise, the same tone she'd used years ago when she'd saved his unit from an ambush in Kandahar. It was her. And now she was on his flight. He switched off the intercom and whispered to his co-pilot, "Whatever happens, keep this plane level." Back in row 17, straightened slightly, wrists still bound, eyes sharp. The hum of the engines filled her ears like a countdown. She exhaled slowly, grounding herself. 17A, she murmured under her breath, remembering the seat number that fate had given her. Perfect view. As the hijackers barked orders and passengers wept, Shaw, once an intelligence operative, now a ghost, prepared to rise again. Because sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. Sometimes it boards the same flight. The cabin was a storm of panic. Children cried into their mothers' sleeves. Men froze in disbelief. The hijackers moved methodically, each step rehearsed, their nerves sharp as wire. The leader, a tall man with cold eyes and an accent couldn't quite place, barked orders to his men. Secure the aisles, take the cockpit. Kept her head down, wrists still loosely bound, though the plastic tie barely held. The nearest hijacker kicked a laptop bag out of his way, pointing his rifle at a trembling teenager who dared to move. The woman beside whispered a prayer. The captain's voice came faintly through the cabin intercom, static, tense, deliberate. We're complying. No one resist. Everyone stay calm. Liar, the leader shouted, slamming the intercom handset to the floor. You open that door or I start shooting. Raised her head slightly, eyes flicking to the cockpit door. The reinforced panel, standard for post-9/11 commercial flights, would hold for a while, but not forever. She knew these tactics, the fear, the chaos, the psychological chokehold. It was how control began, and if they gained access to the cockpit, everyone on board would be bargaining with death. She adjusted her posture, sitting, her voice calm. What do you want? The nearest hijacker turned to her, startled that anyone dared to speak. His rifle wavered slightly. Silence. But the leader noticed her tone. He approached, boots thudding softly against the carpeted aisle. You talk like soldier, he said, squinting at her. Who are you? Met his gaze. Someone you don't want to threaten. The man studied her, smirking. Big words for small woman. He raised his rifle, intending to frighten her, but didn't flinch. She looked him in the eye with a coldness that sent an involuntary shiver through him. That same calm, the kind that belonged to people who had seen death and didn't fear it anymore. At the front, the cockpit door shuddered under a heavy bang. The hijacker outside shouted again, open or die. Inside, Captain gripped the yoke, his knuckles white. He muttered, she's on board, it's her, it's really her. His co-pilot glanced over. Who, that woman? Nodded slowly. Shaw, I flew her team out of Kandahar in 2018. Spectre. Saved 30 of our men that night, but she was declared KIA. The co-pilot blinked, confused. You're saying the dead British agent is in row 17. Jaw tightened. If she's who I think she is, we might live through this. Back in the cabin, observed every detail. Their weapons, their discipline, their leader's arrogance. They were trained, but not enough. Professionals didn't scream orders or waste ammunition to prove dominance. These were zealots with borrowed power and short tempers, dangerous but predictable. She looked down at her wrists, twisting them slightly. The plastic tie strained. One more move and it would snap. The plane shuddered again as they hit turbulence. Passengers screamed. A hijacker stumbled, used that second. She broke the tie with a subtle motion, hiding the sound beneath the roar of the engines. The leader shouted something in a language she only half understood. He turned back toward her just as she lowered her hands naturally to her lap. What did you say your name was? He asked. Lips curled faintly. I didn't. The leader's smirk faltered. There was something unsettling about her composure. You military. Used to be, she said softly. Now I just fly. He laughed mockingly. Not anymore. He turned away, barking at his men. We take cockpit now. His heartbeat slowed. The moment was approaching, the pivot point where fear could become opportunity. She could see the captain's shadow moving behind the door's narrow window, the faint reflection of his hand resting on the emergency release. He was waiting for a signal. Her eyes lifted to meet his through the tiny pane. 1 second. That was all they shared, a silent recognition. Whispered to himself, "Spectre, if it's you, do something." She exhaled, her hand subtly brushing the edge of the food tray beside her. The plan formed in her head, exact and lethal. 3 hijackers left. 2 guns visible. 1 window of time. Smiled faintly, the kind of smile that came before chaos. For now she stayed still, watching, calculating. But deep inside she already knew. The hunt had begun. The air in the cabin felt heavier now, thick with fear and jet fuel. Every whisper carried tension, every movement risked death. Sat still, unarmed yet dangerous, her mind replaying every second like a tactical map. She had no weapon, no team, and no backup, but she had something the hijackers didn't: clarity. The leader paced the aisle, checking on his men. One guarded the cockpit door, another stood at the rear with a trembling hand on his rifle. Their formation was sloppy, adrenaline driving every mistake. Saw it. Every step they took screamed opportunity. The youngest hijacker, barely older than 20, grabbed a flight attendant by the wrist. "Bring water," he barked, voice cracking. She obeyed, sobbing quietly. Eyes followed him, nodding the loosened safety catch on his weapon. Her fingers twitched slightly. Across the aisle, a child whimpered, "Mom, I'm scared." The leader snapped, "Quiet." His rifle jerked toward them. That was the spark. Instincts ignited. She rose halfway from her seat, voice cutting through the cabin. Enough! The word wasn't loud, but it carried the kind of power that made soldiers freeze. Every head turned. The leader spun toward her, fury flaring. "Sit down." But didn't. Her gaze locked on him, unflinching. "You point that gun at another child and I swear you'll regret it." He sneered, striding closer. "You think you scare me, woman?" "No," she said evenly. "I think you don't understand who you're threatening." Passengers stared, breathless. Some thought she'd lost her mind. But the captain in the cockpit, listening through a half-broken intercom line, felt a chill run through him. That tone, that control under pressure, he knew it. Whispered, "It's her, Spectre." The hijacker raised his rifle, barrel inches from his chest. "Sit down or I shoot." Her eyes flicked to the gun's slide, sloppy grip, finger already tensing. She exhaled once, slow and deliberate. Then she moved. A tray flew from the seat beside her, slamming into the hijacker's wrist. The rifle fired, a deafening crack, and the bullet shattered an overhead compartment. Passengers screamed. Closed the distance in one fluid motion, twisting his arm until the bone snapped with a sickening pop. The gun fell. She caught it midair, spinning to aim before he hit the floor. The leader froze, stunned by her speed. His men shouted in confusion. Stepped over the fallen hijacker, her tone calm. "Everyone stay down." The cabin fell silent except for the whimper of a baby. The leader's fury returned in a roar. "Shoot her," he screamed. The rear guard aimed but fired first, a single shot that shattered his rifle's stock. It spun from his hands, useless. She didn't kill, she neutralized. Swift, precise, surgical. The captain's voice crackled faintly through the damaged intercom. "Spectre, if that's you, what's the situation?" Didn't hesitate. 2 down, 1 injured, leader armed. Keep the cockpit sealed. Her voice was steady, professional, cold as steel. Every passenger who heard her felt a wave of impossible calm. It was as if death itself had paused to listen. The leader backed up the aisle, gun shaking slightly. You can't stop all of us." Tilted her head, eyes narrowing. "Try me." He aimed low, firing twice. She dove behind a seat, returning fire just once. The bullet grazed his shoulder. He screamed, staggering toward the galley, clutching the wound. Blood dotted the cabin floor. She moved fast, clearing weapons from the unconscious hijackers. Her body flowed like muscle memory, every motion honed from years of black ops training. When she looked up again, the leader had vanished toward the cockpit. picked up the radio one hijacker dropped and tuned the frequency. Static hissed. Then a voice, faint and sinister, broke through. Phase 2 in motion. Detonator ready. Her stomach sank. There were more of them. She pressed the comm button. Captain, listen carefully. There's a second team, probably in the hold. Don't open that door no matter what. Voice came back hoarse. How many? I don't know, she replied, eyes sweeping the cabin. But it's not over yet. She looked at the terrified passengers, people who'd seen an ordinary woman become something else entirely. Then she whispered to herself, steady and low, not while I'm breathing. Outside, thunder rumbled through the clouds as Flight 219 hurtled into the darkness. Inside, Shaw reloaded the captured rifle, eyes cold and focused. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here. Smoke lingered in the air. The scent of gunpowder mixed with recycled cabin oxygen and fear. The cries had gone quiet now. Every passenger, frozen in disbelief, stood in the aisle, weapon low but ready. The adrenaline pounding through her veins had slowed into razor focus. 2 hijackers were down, 1 injured, possibly unconscious. The leader was still out there, bleeding, angry, and unpredictable. And somewhere on the aircraft there was mention of a detonator. That word haunted the back of her mind. Crouched beside a fallen man, checked his pulse. Alive. She searched him, finding a radio, spare magazines, and a folded note, coordinates scrawled in Arabic. No detonation device. Not yet. She pressed the side button on the radio, whispering, "Captain, do you copy?" The line crackled. "Spectre, I read you," answered quietly. His voice was steadier now. "Status." 3 neutralized, she said. "Leader escaped toward the cockpit. You still sealed." "Locked tight," he confirmed. "But something's wrong. Autopilot's fluctuating. They may have tried to override it remotely." Her jaw tightened. "Then they've got someone on the outside feeding them." In the background, the co-pilot muttered, "Jesus." Peeked over the seat, scanning the first-class section. The passengers lay still, eyes wide, afraid to even breathe. She gave them a nod, calm, confident. "It's all right," she whispered. "Stay quiet. Don't move unless I say so." A flight attendant crawled toward her, eyes red. "Who are you?" she whispered. Didn't look back. "Someone who's not supposed to exist." She slid down the aisle, back to the wall, stepped silent. The overhead lights flickered as turbulence jolted the aircraft. Outside, lightning danced through the night clouds. She counted the flashes, 5 seconds apart. A storm was closing in. "Captain," she whispered into the radio, "when I give you a signal, cut cabin power. I need shadows." "Understood. What signal?" "You'll know it when you hear it." Exhaled slowly, the sound shaking through static. "You haven't changed." "Neither have you," she said quietly, "still following orders." A faint smile touched her lips before she continued down the narrow corridor. Near the galley, a sound, metal clinking, low curses in another language. Froze, listening. The leader was there, rummaging through the service carts. She leaned around the corner, catching a glimpse of his arm, bloodied sleeve, hand clutching something small and rectangular. Her stomach dropped. The detonator. He turned suddenly, spotting her reflection in a metal panel. "You!" he roared, firing twice. Bullets shattered a row of coffee pots, scalding steam filling the air. Ducked, rolled, and fired back, hitting the wall inches from his head. He cursed, stumbling deeper into the galley. She followed, closing the distance. Her voice stayed calm even as her heart hammered. "You're bleeding. You won't make it out alive. Drop the device." He laughed through the pain. "You think you can stop this? You don't even know what you're on." His eyes narrowed. "Then tell me." He pressed his back against the wall, breathing heavily. "You're carrying something your government wants buried. When this plane goes down, everyone will know the truth." That chilled her more than the weapon in his hand. Whatever this operation was, it wasn't just terrorism. It was a statement. A message. He lunged forward suddenly, trying to slam her into the counter. She twisted, deflecting his arm, sending the detonator clattering across the floor. Both dove for it at the same time. The plane lurched violently. A scream erupted from the cabin. Luggage tumbled from overhead bins. The leader's fingers brushed the device, but's boot came down hard, crushing his wrist. He howled in agony. She kicked the detonator away, sliding it beneath a seat. Then she struck, one swift jab to the throat, one to the ribs. He dropped, gasping. She pointed her weapon at him. "You're done." He coughed, smiling weakly through blood. "You can't stop all of it." "What do you mean?" she demanded. He laughed. "There's more than one." The cockpit door alarm blared, a sharp, continuous beep. Voice burst through her earpiece. "Spectre, we've got a secondary signal coming from the navigation deck. Something's armed up front." Pulse spiked. She turned, sprinting toward the cockpit. Passengers ducked as she ran past, her boots pounding the aisle. Her voice cut through the chaos. "Captain, don't open that door, I'm coming." Behind her, the wounded terrorist laughed until his voice broke. Too late. Didn't look back. She could already hear the faint ticking through the metal door. Whatever was waiting in that cockpit, it wasn't just a hijacking anymore. It was war at 30,000 feet. The ticking grew louder as neared the cockpit. Every instinct screamed danger. Her boots slipped slightly on spilled coffee, but she didn't stop. The red emergency light blinked through the smoke, painting the narrow hallway in flashes of warning. "Captain, respond," she barked into the radio. Voice came back, strained, hurried. "There's something under the co-pilot's seat, wires, timer, maybe an explosive. It's counting down, 3 minutes. Her throat tightened at the sound of her old name. "Don't touch it, I'm 30 seconds out." She burst through the curtain separating first class from the cockpit corridor. 2 terrified passengers huddled there, one clutching a baby, the other trembling uncontrollably. Raised her hand. "Stay low, keep your heads down. Don't move until I tell you." They nodded, eyes wide. She turned back toward the door, her mind racing. How had the bomb gotten into the cockpit? The leader couldn't have placed it, he'd been in the rear. Someone had helped, someone on the crew. "Captain," she said into the mic, "how well do you trust your co-pilot?" A pause, then hesitant voice. "We flew together once before, but not enough to know him." His gut twisted. "Step back from him now." Inside turned, glancing at his co-pilot, Lieutenant, who sat rigid, face pale, hand hovering near the seat where the ticking came from. Sweat rolled down his temple. "Don't move," warned. Eyes flicked toward the door. "You don't understand," he said softly. "If we don't follow through, they'll kill my family." Heard it through the cockpit mic feed. Her pulse spiked. "Listen to me. I know what leverage feels like, but you don't have to die for them." He looked at the control panel, voice breaking. "It's not about dying, ma'am. It's about finishing what's already started." Then his hand dropped toward the seat. Slammed the override switch. The cockpit door hissed open. She dove through before the lock could reset, flinched as she rolled to her feet, weapon drawn. "Step away," she shouted. Froze. The timer under the seat read 207. Dozens of wires ran into a gray box, crudely soldered military design. Too advanced for random terrorists, this was deliberate engineering. Crouched, scanning the bomb. C4 compound. Digital detonator. Manual trigger option. "Who built this?" she demanded. Lips trembled. "It came from the ground crew in Ankara. They told me it was a tracking device. I swear I didn't know until we were airborne." "Until they called you," muttered, seeing the guilt in his eyes. "And then you knew." He nodded faintly, tears streaming. "They have my wife, my son, I didn't." "Enough," she cut him off gently but firmly. "We'll get them back, but right now you're going to help me disarm this." Swallowed hard. "You can defuse it." Didn't answer. She'd done this before, but every device was different. And this one was sophisticated enough to kill everyone if she made a wrong move. She inspected the wiring. 2 red lines, one blue, one yellow. Red connected to a dual circuit. The detonator was armed through a dual trigger system. If she severed the wrong one, it would detonate instantly. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Timer, linked to a motion sensor. If the plane jolts too hard, it'll trip the fail-safe. Clench the yoke. We're flying through a thunderstorm, that's not helping. She shot him a look, then keep it level. The timer flashed 1:11. She wiped sweat from her forehead, heart pounding. The cabin felt smaller, the hum of the engines deafening. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a small blade from her boot. She said, "Walk me through the setup. Which line arms the relay?" His voice cracked. Blue wire disables the timer, but the red controls the backup charge. Which red? He hesitated. The one with the stripe. Her breath slowed. Every second stretched endlessly. She pressed the blade under the striped red wire, praying his memory was right. "Don't lie to me," she said softly, "because if this goes wrong, no one walks away." He closed his eyes. "I'm not lying." She cut. The timer froze at 0:47. For 3 full seconds, no one breathed. Then the light on the detonator blinked off. Exhaled slowly, lowering her weapon. "It's disarmed." Slumped against the control panel, trembling. "You did it." She shook her head. "No, we're not safe yet." "Why not?" Stared out the windshield, where flashes of lightning illuminated the endless night. "Because this wasn't meant to end here. This bomb was just one piece of something bigger." The radio crackled, an unfamiliar voice, calm and British. "Spectre, you were never supposed to be on that plane." Froze. Her past had just caught up to her. The cockpit went silent. The radio hissed softly, carrying that calm British accent that sliced through like ice. "Spectre," the voice repeated, smooth, deliberate. "It's been a long time." Glanced at her, confusion and fear mixing in his eyes. "Who the hell is that?" Didn't answer right away. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She knew that voice, knew the tone, the control. "That's Director Alan Stroud," she whispered finally. "MI6. Frowned your people." "Not anymore," she said quietly. "He's the reason I disappeared." The radio crackled again. "I assume you found our little gift. Quite clever of you to disarm it. But you know this changes nothing. You were never meant to survive that flight." Trembled in his seat. "He's the one who ordered this." Clenched her jaw. "He doesn't order, he erases. And I was supposed to be erased 3 years ago." Voice hardened. "Why, what did you do?" She stared out the windshield, lightning splitting the clouds beyond. "I found something I wasn't supposed to. A CIA transport in Syria. Documents proving MI6 was funding rogue cells for leverage. I tried to expose it. Stroud made sure I vanished before I could." Stared, trying to process. "And now he's finishing the job." "Exactly." The radio voice chuckled softly, almost indulgent. "You always were too curious for your own good. But no matter. That aircraft you're sitting on, it's part of a demonstration. A message to both governments. You die a traitor and chaos cleans the slate." His hand tightened around the radio. "You won't get away with this." "I already have," Stroud replied. "In 15 minutes you'll enter U.S. airspace. When that happens, a second on the aircraft's underside will activate. Nothing you do can stop it. Goodbye, Spectre." The line went dead. Spun toward her. "Where?" "External mount," she said instantly. "Probably near the landing gear or fuel tank." "You mean outside the plane?" She nodded grimly. "Exactly." He stared at her like she was mad. "We're 30,000 feet up." "I know." Looked up, shaking. "There's a maintenance hatch under cargo deck. It leads outside, but no one can survive that altitude without gear." Was already unzipping her duffel. She pulled out a slim black harness, oxygen mask, and a coil of rope. Realized what she meant. "You can't be serious." Someone has to disarm it manually, she said, tightening the straps. If that detonates, everyone dies anyway. I'm not letting that happen. You'll freeze to death, he argued. Not if I'm fast. She looked at him, calm and certain. Keep this bird steady. No diveys, no turns. If I lose grip out there, that's it. Rose shakily. I'll help her open the hatch. Nodded. Good man, let's move. They descended into the lower cargo bay, the lights flickering as turbulence rolled through. The metal walls creaked, the hum of the engines deafening. Pulled at the lever near the floor hatch. Once this opens, it'll decompress the section. You'll have seconds. Fitted her mask, testing the oxygen flow. That's all I need. Voice came through the intercom, low but firm. You come back up here, you hear me? She smirked faintly. You always were terrible at goodbyes, Captain. The hatch hissed. A violent rush of air tore through the cargo bay, papers and crates whipping into the void. Crouched low, gripping the cable, feeling the cold stab into her bones. The roar of wind was deafening. Through the gap, she could see the wing illuminated by lightning, and beneath it, a faint red glow pulsing under the fuselage. There it is, she whispered. Shouted, you've got maybe 90 seconds before oxygen loss kicks in. She nodded and stepped into the storm. The cold hit her like knives. Every breath felt like shards of ice in her lungs. Wind screamed past as she edged along the metal underbelly, gripping the rope, one hand after another. The ground was invisible beneath the swirling clouds. She reached the glow, another bomb, magnetically sealed to the fuel line. Smaller but deadlier. She gasped through the comms, I've got visual on the 2 timers linked to. The line cut off. The storm swallowed her voice. Fingers trembled as she pulled the detonator casing open, wind tearing at her mask. Inside, the timer blinked 000436. Her heart stopped. This wasn't it was a countdown. And it had already begun. The wind tore it like a living thing, howling around her ears. Every breath was a razor through her lungs, every gust threatening to rip her from the fuselage. Lightning flashed, illuminating the massive steel wing beneath her feet. Below, clouds churned, hiding thousands of feet of empty air. One misstep and she would fall into the abyss. Her fingers clutched the magnetic harness, eyes locked on the small bomb affixed to the underside of the fuselage. Red digits flashed, 00412. Teeth gritted. Time had become a physical weight pressing against her chest. Her oxygen mask fogged as she exhaled, breath freezing instantly in the storm's bitter gusts. Captain, how's the plane? She yelled into the comm, fighting the wind. Stable, replied, though she could hear the tremor in his voice. Cloud turbulence, but holding. Don't screw this up. I'm not going to, she shouted back. She leaned over the wing, trying to keep her balance. The bomb's magnetic casing was custom-made, likely designed for quick attachment and instant detonation if tampered with. Every second brought her closer to disaster. She ran her fingers along the wires, memorizing the circuit in an instant. 2 red, 1 blue, 1 yellow, plus a digital trigger wired in a loop. Her fingers hovered over the wires, mind racing through scenarios. A miscut and the plane would explode midair. She exhaled slowly, muscles tensed. Precision, speed, focus. One mistake would kill everyone aboard, hundreds of lives hanging on her choices. She tugged at the first red wire. Nothing. Good. Then the blue, timer blinked, still counting down 0357. A deafening crack of thunder jolted the plane, the wing beneath her flexing. His heart leapt. She braced herself, holding the harness like her life depended on it, because it did. Almost there, she whispered, teeth clenched. Lightning illuminated the fuselage again, revealing a faint logo etched into the device. She recognized it from classified files years ago, MI6 Black Ops, Stroud, his signature. He had designed this personally to ensure she never intervened. Not today, Alan, she hissed. Voice crackled through the comm. You'll need to cut the striped red wire. That's the secondary trigger. Only that disables the completely. Nodded, wiping a layer of ice from her gloves. One wire, one chance. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She slid the blade under the striped red wire. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from sheer adrenaline. The timer blinked 00233. The harness shuddered under a violent gust. His teeth sank into her lip as she steadied herself, pulling the wire free. Sparks erupted, but nothing else happened. She held her breath. The timer slowed. 00145. Captain, she gasped, voice raw, this disabled for now. Exhaled, relief mixing with awe. God, you're insane. Not insane, she muttered, alive. But there was no time to celebrate. The secondary timer, the one she hadn't noticed, was linked to the primary detonator she had cut. A faint digital countdown blinked under the casing. 00130. She froze, adrenaline spiking. It wasn't just a bomb, it was a trap. Someone wanted her alive enough to watch, but the plane itself had been rigged to explode if she hesitated. Lightning illuminated a narrow gap between the fuselage and the wing. Climbed, repositioning herself to reach the secondary trigger. Wind ripped at her, ice forming on her gloves, freezing her grip. One mistake, one slip, everyone dies. She reached the secondary wire. Fingers trembling, teeth clenched, mind razor-sharp. Then a movement from below, something in the clouds, another figure, too fast to identify. Froze, heart hammering. Was it another operative, another hijacker? She shook her head, focusing. One cut, 1 second. The wire severed cleanly. The digital timer blinked out. Silence, almost deafening, swallowed the storm around her. Exhaled, trembling violently but alive. For the first time in years, she allowed herself a fleeting smile. Through the comm, voice was almost broken. You did it, everyone's alive. She nodded to herself, gripping the harness. For now, she whispered, for now. Lightning flashed once more, illuminating the plane as it cut through clouds toward safety, carrying hundreds of lives saved by one ghost who refused to die. But knew this wasn't the end. Stroud's hand still lingered somewhere in the shadows, and one day their paths would collide again. The storm clouds began to thin, revealing the faint glow of city lights far below. Shaw clung to the fuselage for a final moment, letting the harness guide her safely back into the cargo bay. The roar of the engine still filled her ears, but for the first time that night, a fragile calm settled over her. She pulled off the oxygen mask, lungs burning, and scanned the cabin. Passengers were wide-eyed, frozen in disbelief, some crying, some hugging one another tightly. They didn't yet understand what had happened, but the chaos had ended. Captain staggered toward her, his face pale, hands trembling. I don't know how to thank you. You saved them all. Allowed herself a faint, tired smile. Just part of the job, Captain. Her voice was low, calm, but edged with exhaustion. She glanced at who was still kneeling near the deactivated bomb. You did well, she said. You helped, but don't ever let anyone manipulate you like that again. He nodded silently, tears streaking his face. I thought I had no choice. You always have a choice, replied. The passengers began to stir, murmuring, crying, hugging. A small child ran up to her, clutching a stuffed animal, crouched, offering a reassuring smile. It's over, she whispered. You're safe now. Approached the cockpit again, picking up the radio. Tower, Flight 219, emergency landing requested. We're secure but need assistance on arrival. Over. The city lights grew brighter as the plane descended, casting long shadows across the cabin. The passengers, once terrified, now looked at with awe and gratitude. They didn't know her story, didn't know she had been declared dead years ago, a ghost to the world, but she had saved them. Moved to the cockpit door, glancing one last time at the pilots. Keep it steady, she said softly, and don't open this door until ground crew secures the perimeter. Nodded, you'll come down safely, right? She gave him a ghost of a smile. "I always find a way." The plane touched down smoothly, the tires skimming the runway. Emergency crews surrounded the aircraft, flashlights cutting through the night. Passengers filed out slowly, some still clinging to the fear of what had happened. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and paramedics moved among them, checking for injuries. Stayed in the shadows near the rear, letting the chaos wash over the city lights. She moved silently, almost unnoticed, blending into the crowd of ground crew and officials. Her mission was not over, not completely. Stroud was still out there, still in the shadows, and she knew the operation was far from finished. A voice echoed in her memory, the calm, deliberate British accent from the radio. "You were never supposed to be on that plane." Clenched her fists, determination hardening. She slipped through the crowd unseen, moving toward her vehicle parked at a discreet distance. A black SUV idled silently, engine warm. She slid inside, shutting the door softly behind her, and exhaled slowly. Her reflection in the tinted window revealed a woman exhausted, battered, but alive. A woman who had faced death and won, not by luck but by skill, instinct, and will. The city stretched before her like a battlefield at peace. She thought of the passengers she had saved, the innocent lives spared. And she thought of the path ahead, the unfinished business with Stroud, the covert operations that had marked her life since Afghanistan, the ghosts she could never outrun. Her phone buzzed quietly in the SUV. She glanced at it, seeing an encrypted message from an unknown source. "Spectre, they know you're alive, prepare." She let the message sit, eyes fixed on the horizon. For a fleeting moment she allowed herself a smile. She had survived this night, and for now the lives of hundreds rested in safety. But Shaw knew one thing above all: the world had not seen the last of her. And the deadliest missions, the ones that mattered most, were yet to come. The SUV pulled away silently into the night, leaving behind the airport, the chaos, and the storm. Shaw disappeared once more into the shadows, a ghost to the world, a guardian to the innocent, and a warning to those who underestimated her. Somewhere Stroud was watching, somewhere he was planning, but Shaw had learned long ago, ghosts are never as dead as people believe. And some ghosts are unstoppable. The end.